Two interesting things, that we see in the halakha is that the Chazal, they had this thing about you shouldn't go to a goy for two things. One is to go to a goyish doctor, goy. Number two also, goyish barber. Huh? You know who was a barber, right? A famous goy who was a barber, in the Bible, the Tanakh. You know who it was, right?
In Iran, goy takes Jew, kill.
You see? We're going to talk about that. Yeah. Who was the famous barber in the Tanakh? You know who it was? Haman. They say Haman. Harasha. He was a barber. he was a barber. They say, right, that I'm sorry? Yeah. So anyway, he was Haman was a barber, and that's why, the king, the Melech told him, Hashverosh, he told him, I want you to cut his hair, Mordechai, so he could look nice, So he had to do a haircut for him, when they were going to put him on the horse, to ride on the horse. That was the whole thing, he told him to give him a haircut. You're a barber, aren't you? Anyway, right? Why do I tell you this? He's right what he's saying, right? David. David is always right. He's always right, David. So he understands a lot of things. So anyway, it's true. So what does that mean, right? The reason why they didn't want you to go to a goyish barber or a goyish doctor, because they're afraid that the guy's going to kill you. You understand? Let's face it, we live in a world, a lot of goyim are anti-Semites, they like to kill Jews, We see what's going on in Israel. Go, if you don't believe me, right? Go, see what's going on in Paris. How many Jews they're killing over there. Look what's going on in New York City, in Brooklyn. What's going on there? You see what's going on there. So don't tell me, no, they're all good people. Yeah, you're good people, yeah. Don't delude yourself, They hate us, By the way, they say the Chazal, it's halakha. Esav soneh leYaakov. It's a halakha, they say. Halakha. What does that mean? You can assume, that the goy hates you. It's an assumption, You can assume, it's an assumption. Okay. So that's the thing, that's the reason why the Rabbi said, don't go, to them for a haircut. Don't go to them as a doctor. Why? Because you know what it is, right? When you go to a goy, to barber, he has a knife there, He has razors, So if you're not looking, he can cut you, as you said, right? David. He got it right. That's the thing, he can cut you. So they said, don't go to a goyish barber. Same thing with the doctor. The doctor, he can kill you, He can do surgery, and kill you, or he can give you some bad medicine, poison, and kill you. All kinds of things he can do, So this is the reason why they said, don't go to them. But says the Shulchan Aruch, it depends on what the situation is. Not every time, it's asur. Because the truth is, if you ever notice, by the way, right, that when you go, sometimes when we have an insurance policy, right, Medicaid, Medicare, whatever, right, all those, right, the Fidelis, all these things. Sometimes they give you a doctor, to go to. He's not Jewish, so you have no choice, It's the only doctor you got there. He's not a Jewish doctor. So what do you do? Oh, don't go. No, so what are you going to do? Die? What? Kill yourself? What are you going to do, right? Yeah. Huh?
Doctor, boy, they're going to kill you?
No, they never killed anybody, the doctors? They have, believe me, they killed a lot of people. So, sometimes on purpose and sometimes by accident they kill people also. It happens all the time. Anyway, right, the point is that... right, exactly. So anyway, right, the point is like this, that the rabbi said, depends on the situation though. So as we said, right, sometimes you got no choice, you know what I mean? You only have a goyish doctor, there's nobody else. So what do you do now? Don't go here. What are you going to do? Commit suicide? What are you going to do? Kill yourself? Right, exactly, yeah. Also over there, by the way, in Israel, there's a lot of Arab doctors there. A lot of doctors over there are Arabs in Israel. They have education. Huh? Could be. I'm not exactly sure what the statistics are. I believe you. Whatever it is, right? So the point is, sometimes you can't avoid it. There's nothing you can do, So what are you going to do in a case like that? So it says the Shulchan Aruch like this. When it comes to the doctor, okay, so it depends on, what kind of doctor he is, right? In the old days, by the way, the doctor they had in those days is not the doctor we have today. You know what the difference is? Today, to be a doctor, you need a license. You know what I mean? You got to go to medical school, pass the tests. You got to get a license. You got to be registered. You take an oath, They make you take an oath, a shvuah. Hippocratic oath, right? There's all kinds of things there. So says the Shulchan Aruch, if you have a doctor like this, we call it Mumche LeRabim. So what does that mean? He has a license, he's being observed, there's a system, that observes him, if he does something wrong, he's going to get caught, They're going to know what happened. They're going to figure it out. They're going to do investigation, Things like this. So the thing is, when a doctor is official like this, oficialny, everything is on paper, so there he's afraid, to do something, to kill somebody, because he knows he's going to get into trouble. It says, right, lo mara nafshe, you know what that means? He doesn't want to hurt his own business, that's his parnasah, So if he knows if he kills somebody, his parnasah he's gonna be finished. They're gonna put him in jail. They're gonna take away his license, I know, by the way, several doctors, they took away their license here in America, because they were doing bad things. They take away your license, What do you think they do? They tell you, oh, yeah, okay, you're playing games, huh? Okay, we'll take care of you. You're gonna lose your parnasah. You're gonna lose your profession. So that's the thing, since the doctor is afraid about these things, so therefore we say, in a case like that, it's mutar. So therefore, here, right in America, also in Israel, most places, also in Europe, they have official, and everything is official. So doctor is being monitored, he's registered, everything is oficialny. So there you can go to a goyish doctor, especially if you have no choice, the truth is, let's face it, between you and me, right? Usually Jewish doctors are smarter, they're more clever, That's why people like Jewish doctors. Even the Goyim, many of them, they like to go to a Jewish doctor. They say, oh, I want a Jewish doctor and a Jewish lawyer. Why? Because they know they're the best, They know, right? That's the way Trump was, Trump, when he was younger, they used to ask him, who do you want to handle your money? So he says, I want those guys with the yarmulkes, I want them to handle my money. They're honest, chesty, They're chesty. They don't play games. They're not going to steal your money. He knows, right? He knows. So that's the thing, So, therefore, Rabbi, that's the thing. So, therefore, if it's somebody who has a license, registered, you're allowed to go to him, especially if you have knowledge. But as we said, right, sometimes it's better to go to a Jewish doctor because they're more clever, and they're more friendly, to a Jewish person. It's more, religious, even better, right, even better. Yeah, exactly, it's true. So that's much better, so you can find somebody like that. You may prefer that, I personally would, I prefer a Jewish doctor. That's my personal preference, always, just like Trump, same thing, right? So, same thing with everybody else. There are, by the way, even some anti-Semites, they hate Jews, but they say, when it's a doctor, I get a Jewish doctor, because they know, they're good doctors, even the ones who hate the Jews. They know, that they're the best, So that's something else, but sometimes, as we said, right, you got no choice, so you got to go to a goyish doctor, otherwise, what are you going to do? What, go to nothing? So then you go, as we said, right, if he has a license, everything is official, you can go. That's the thing, right? Okay, fine. That's regarding the doctor. What about the barber, right? So it says, right, Shulchan Aruch, when it comes to the barber, what do you got to do, right, in order to solve the problem? What you do is, make sure, if you go to a goyish barber, right, there's, those, right, in New York we have those Italiano barbers, they're good, they know how to do good haircut. Depends on what style. Italianos, they're good. The Bukharians also now, they're more than Italiano now. They're all the barbers are here in New York are Bukharians now, 90%. I don't know, whatever it is. Right? They took over that business. Am I right? Yes. But still, right, there are some, who are goyim. So if you want to go to a goyish, right, the goyish barber, what do you do? So it says Shulchan Aruch, make sure, right, don't make sure the people can come in there. People can see what's going on, It's not something which is locked, like yichud. Why? Because they were afraid he's going to take a razor, and cut you. If nobody can see. But if somebody can come in there, he's scared. Mirtat, he's scared. So in a case like that, we say, you can go. So therefore today it's not a problem. Why? Because all the barber shops are open, right? They're not locked, everything is open, Anybody can come in anytime. And there's also cameras there sometimes, whatever, it's all kinds of things, right? So therefore, right, there's really no problem, in a case like that, when people can come in and out. But don't go, to a goy in private, right, in his own private room, nobody there, locks the door, he has a razor in his hand. Who knows what he's going to do to you, you gotta watch out, Maybe he's one of those terrorists, those Arab guys, Who knows?
They have a license too.
You should have a license too. Yeah, so that's the thing, so this is the way it is, when it comes to barber as well. That you should, make sure. There's also another way, they say, it says in Shulchan Aruch, that if it's somebody, right, who, it's a barber, but the customer, right, the Jewish customer who's getting the haircut is somebody famous, somebody prominent, people know him, he's well known, he's a respected person in the community, So there the goy's afraid, to hurt him. You know why? Because he knows, right? If this guy's prominent Jew, somebody important, he's going to get caught. They're going to investigate and find out what happened. You know what I mean? Because they're not going to let it go like that. It's not going to be like that. So therefore, when it's somebody prominent like this, let's say he's like a big businessman, famous guy, politician, something like that. They're afraid, to hurt people like that. You know what I mean? That's the thing. So therefore, in a case like that, says the Shulchan Aruch, you can go. So either one or the other, right? As we said, either the place is open, people can come in. So he's afraid, he's not going to do nothing to the Jew. Or the other way, as we said, right? Or we're talking about somebody who's famous, and then right, we're not really afraid of that anyway. So meaning what? If somebody's famous, prominent Jew, he could even go, in a locked place, with a goy to get a haircut, because the goy is not going to harm him. He doesn't want to get caught, with this prominent Jew, to do something with him. It's going to be famous, it's going to get the word is going to get out. That's the way it is over time. So therefore, it really depends on the.
You have an option to go to a Jewish, like today, like you said, everybody in the party. Like there is no tzivui, like even prefer to go to a Jewish, not to give the money to a boy.
Yeah. So the truth is, there are rules like this.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So what is
the? Living in Montana.
You understand? You understand his question? You get the question that he's asking. His question is, if you have a goy and a Jew, right? Maybe you should go to the Jew to give him business. You know what I mean? Better to give him business.
Yeah.
To give him parnasah.
Even if you go in
right.
for shopping.
So yeah, it is written. Yeah, you're right. It's true. It's true what you're saying. It's true. It's written in the Ramah. This thing. What you're saying. That it's better to give the the Jew parnasah. If you can. But when does that apply? It applies when they're both like equal. But if the goy is, let's say, giving something better, you know what I mean, something better or cheaper, so there, you want to save money. Why save his money? You save your money. First your money comes. You know what I mean? So if you can save money, and go to a goy, sometimes, like people go to Costco, right?
But
Costco,
to get killed.
Huh?
Then you have a chance to get killed.
No, yeah, we're talking about business over here. That's something else. We're not talking about that case. But anyway, right? Why do we go to Costco? Costco is a goy, because we save money there. We save some money. We save a couple of bucks here and there. We buy with volume, right? We buy many things. We save money. Yeah, okay, you could have gone to the Jewish supermarket, but this one is cheaper, that's why we go there. So it's allowed to do that, to go to Costco, for that reason. You know what I mean? To save some money. But in general, right, if they're giving you the equal, service, right, so then you should prefer the Jew, that's true what you're saying, right? Why? Give them some parnasah, Baruch Adonai Le'olam. אמן ואמן. רבי חנין, כמו שאומר, צריך לקבל שבוע לחזור זכר ישראל, לפיכך הכי בא להם תורה ומצוות שנאמר אדוני חפץ, למען צדקו יגדיל תורה וידי.